All right, everybody. Hello out there in Empowered Soul Network. I am here with the fabulous Glenna Hudson. Glenna is a registered nurse and a spiritual and sexual trauma-informed practitioner. Did I get that right?
You got that right, Sandra. It's a mouthful.
Welcome. Please
Thank
introduce
you.
yourself a little bit more, if you would. Tell us about maybe a little more details about all of that.
Okay, sure. Thank you. Yep, so I'm a registered nurse. I have my master's degree. I've always worked in women's health. I've always just been drawn to supporting and helping women. So it's just part of what I was called here to do. I have worked in L&D and different, I was an IVF nurse for a long time. And then I worked in third party, which is I helped different, well, single people, same-sex couples, anyone having trouble having a child. So I worked with egg donation, sperm donation, gestational carriers, and things like that. So, and there's a lot of trauma in that too. Speaking of that, with people trying to have a baby that cannot, that's a whole nother story, but trauma is trauma. I myself have been through different sexual abuse and traumas, as well as a very long, several decades of spiritual trauma and abuse. And once my body, basically, long story, just decided to one day just quit on me. Neurologically, my CNS system, everything shut down because so much was just repressed after 50 years of just trying to take care of everyone else and not checking in ever with myself. My body just said, "You're done." It forced me to stop. And that's when, after I did my own healing and went through the dark night of the soul, as I call it, I realized this is something super duper duper important. So many women just naturally wanted to come talk to me about their abuse or their religious trauma because it's something of a new thing that a lot of people haven't heard of yet. I mean, now it's the deconstruction is kind of a term people are using, but so I wanted to provide only not that in my counseling services. I do, one-on-one group therapies and such. But then I also launched this Facebook group, Rise and Reclaim, for those who have gone through this and now have a story to tell. And you know what it's like, Sandra, like when your voice has been shoved down for so many years and you finally reclaim that, you're ready to like shout it from the rooftops. You're like, who wants to hear my story? Let me tell my story. And so I wanted to launch this so that people could give other women help and support. How did you get through this?
Yeah.
And so I just want to give back what I've learned and now try to just help others get through what they're dealing with.
Yeah. So, I think more people are, like you said, more people are aware of sexual trauma. What can you dive into a little bit? What is spiritual trauma and how do you work with that?
Mm. Yeah, so I'll just give you a little backstory of what happened to me. I was probably about eight-ish or so. My dad got remarried to a woman. My dad wasn't a nice guy. He would probably admit that if he was on today. I have a great relationship with him now, but I grew up in a very abusive household, and then he remarried a woman who was not only emotionally, verbally abusive, but physically abusive, which is so the hypocrisy because they found Jesus, if you will, and yet was still abusing me
Mm,
in the home. So I see them out there acting one way, talking the talk, but at home I was being abused. Um, I was forced at 10 years old to watch this movie called The Thief in the Night. If anyone's been through religious trauma, they would know what this movie is about. And it's basically from the time I was 8 or 10, I was indoctrinated into believing that the rapture, which is Jesus returning to the earth, was going to come back at any second. And if I didn't make the cut, meaning maybe I had sinned or I told a lie or, it could have been anything. I would be left behind and go through the tribulation. And I was shown a movie at maybe 10 years old of children and women walking up this hill to a guillotine and having their heads sliced off, heads rolling, blood everywhere, screaming. And talk about traumatized. Okay, that's child abuse. Let's just be real. From then on, I was just indoctrinated into this religion where it was a very high control, high fear. That's how they kept you in line, because if you stepped out of this box that was given to you, you were going to go to hell and
Mm.
there would be consequences for you.
Yeah.
And that's why I got married young. I was involved in the purity culture and then was told my role as a woman was just to be a wife and get pregnant and have as many babies as I can so that I can increase the army of God, whatever the heck that means. Looking back, I'm like, what? There's so many, I call them Christianese phrases that Christians say that now that I'm out of it, I look back and I'm like, I don't even know what that means. Doesn't even make any sense to me. Anyway, so I was indoctrinated into that for a very long time, and my dreams didn't matter. My thoughts didn't matter. As a woman, to submit to God first, and then my husband, who's the head of our household and the head of me. So what he says goes. And it doesn't matter what I need, what I want, what I'm thinking, what my feelings are, it doesn't matter. Stick to my role and shut the fuck up. And
So
that's what
this,
I lived with until I was 50 years old when everything kind of came crash and burn for me, quite honestly.
yeah. So it's like my take from what you're sharing is like there's this very extremist and controlling version that you were brought up of maybe it's like taking something that might be pure and skewing it in ways. Is that what you're saying as far as like what's your take now on spirituality or that kind of thing? And how did you or have you found resolve in all of that?
Well, it's a great question. I found resolve in the fact that I no longer believe in the religion I was brought up in. So I can say that confidently. And I also want to put this out here. I was brought up in a very, very strict evangelical community, and it was a cult. Not all evangelicals are in a cult. So I want to make that clear. I'm just sharing my experience. So I don't want anyone thinking that I'm calling everybody that. But any religion can be that high control, high fear based, where it can be any religion. So I'm not even calling out one religion. I just want to make that clear. But I have deconstructed, and that's a term that's like floating around a lot now. People aren't quite sure what that means, but I started asking, I took my God goggles off after things started falling apart. And then I started asking questions. And prior to that experience, we were told not to ask questions, because if we asked questions, then we weren't truly a believer, then we weren't truly saved, then we didn't have enough faith. It always came back to you. Well, what are you doing wrong? Are you not reading enough scripture? Are you in sin? Did you watch a movie that let demons into like you're constantly in fear. I deconstructed from that, and that was gut wrenching. I mean, because the whole time it was happening, all of those outside thoughts kept coming back, like, well, am I gonna go to hell? And now I know I'm not. So I find what happens even in my own practice dealing with people that are coming out of this. Okay, you start over here. It's a spectrum. And I did this too. I came out of this and I finally found freedom, but then I swung the other way. So now I'm like, oh, I'm getting into tarot cards. Maybe I'm a witch, maybe, and now I'm like, but it's the same thing. Now I've put myself in another box. And then I started swinging back. And now you have to find your equilibrium and then come to a place of homeostasis. And that takes a while. And I found that that's very common. And don't feel bad if you're out there doing that because it's part of the process. So if you're asking me, what do I believe now? I still believe in a higher power. Um, but I can't say I have the answers of what happens in the afterlife. And I might change how I feel about it. If you ask me next month, I might have a different opinion because I'm still growing and learning myself.
So this, I think this kind of folds in a little bit, but so you're obviously here on Empowered Soul Network. What does that speak to you? Like, what does that mean to you in being an empowered soul?
You know what's funny is being in the cult I was in, I thought I was an empowered soul. I believed I was an empowered soul because I was part of the group. So I felt empowered because everyone else felt that way. But what I realized after I got out of it is I had no power at all. I felt I had no power, no decisions. My life was not my own. I couldn't think for myself. And that was a huge, huge challenge. So, what you're saying is empowered soul. I had to take time to learn that I had the answers within myself. I mean, I could still connect with God, call it whatever you want, your higher self, your higher power, your source. You have the answer within you. I don't need to go ask my bishop. I don't need to go ask the prophetess. I don't need to go ask the apostle what to do. Give me the answer. I am an empowered soul. So are you. So is everyone else out there. But you got to get to a place where you can believe it for yourself. And that's not easy when you've grown up in a situation where I did. It takes a
Mhm.
lot of intention and effort and work.
Yeah, I can see and feel that for sure.
I'm
Yeah.
very passionate about this, if you can see.
Yeah, I can and feel it. It's in and feeling it's like just like you said, that rise and reclaim. I could feel that energy of you reclaiming that power
Yeah.
within.
And once I got to that place where at first I healed, but then it's like my family still doesn't know. I mean, no one understood me. Everyone thought I was literally going batshit. And
Mm,
so I thought maybe I am going batshit. I don't know. Maybe I need to be committed. I don't know. That wasn't the problem at all, but no one validated my experience. But now that I've been through it, I am one of these people who I want to shout it from the rooftops because I want other ladies to know if you're stuck in this and you feel the way I felt and you're going through what I went through, there is hope. You can do it and there is hope on the other side. And what I found, not only hope, it's freedom. My spirit and my soul is free. And I
mm,
never have felt like this before. Never.
that's beautiful. How do you help people now? Like tell us a little bit about the rise and reclaim and then what else you're involved in too.
Yeah, thanks. So I do coaching on the side as a trauma-informed therapist, and I'm finding more and more women are connecting with me on the religious trauma because now when I first started going to therapy, now when I was in the church, I was told they called it secular therapy, that was from the devil. So we only could get biblical therapy, which is just a circular, there's no way, you never get an answer, right? But once I started to go to a licensed therapist who was trained in these things, she even had never heard of this. She's like, wow, this is really interesting. Tell me more about this. So I realized that I wanted to create a place for other women who could connect and say, oh, you've been through this too. You know what this feels like. So once I became an educator in that, I not only have the personal experience, but now I know how to work with these women as well. And that's so powerful when you connect that. So I do that on the side, one-on-one. I have, classes like that where it's very private, follow HIPAA, standards of practice, all those things. But on Rise and Reclaim, what I'm doing is I'm asking for practitioners, therapists, someone who's trained in anything that can help women overcome trauma or lower their anxiety or heighten their self-esteem or their awareness or their intuition, and don't mind sharing that with the world. Okay, I'm calling them out, and I'm also calling out women like myself who have had their voice silenced for their life and finally have healed and are ready to tell their story and ready to shout it from the rooftops. You're out there and you're going to give other people hope and encouragement. And there's a lot of people in my group that are afraid to share. You're not ready. And I absolutely honor that. They're going to sit back, but they need to hear from us. They just need to listen and sit back, relax, listen, and let me bring on those people that can bring that hope and that encouragement to them.
Wow. Wow, that's beautiful. I'm covered in chills as you're sharing a lot of healing that you're holding the space for.
Yes, yeah. And that's exactly what I'm doing. I'm holding space. And in the Rise and Reclaim, I'm holding space because there's so many women who have been invalidated, called crazy, um, just told that their experience isn't true or what they're saying doesn't make sense, or gaslit, word salads, all these things. I want them to come here, and I just want to hold out my hand and hold space and send you love and let you tell your story and validate your story and your experience. That's all I want to do in a
Mm.
safe place.
What, Glenna, what would the Glenna now, what would you say to that young girl all those years ago?
I've talked to her a lot, to be honest. It sounds crazy, but when I started talking to her, I mean, I could even now, and I won't. Please don't let me cry. But and even if I do, so what? That's life. I want to be as authentic as possible.
Authentic,
I
right?
said
Yeah.
I'm authentic with you. With you, it doesn't matter where you are, where you see me. It's who I am. So if I cry, I cry. But I have talked to that little girl lots of times when I feel she needs me to talk to her. And see, that little girl had to live in survival mode and protect herself to survive. And so I'm finding as I was healing that that little girl was still coming out of me, the abandonment wounds and the traumas and the feeling misunderstood and unloved and all those things. So now I tell her, I'll look right in the mirror and pretend I'm talking to her. And I tell her, I'm sorry for what you went through. It wasn't your fault. And you don't have to protect me anymore. You can step back. You did your job. I thank you for what you did. I love you, but I've got this now.
Mm.
And I got chills just saying that because our younger self, those mechanisms that we put in place to protect ourselves, they stay with us, whether it's conscious or unconscious. They stay with us throughout our life, and it's until we identify them and realize why we're responding the way we're responding, or why we have this internal dialogue that we have with ourselves. 80 to 85% of the time, it's from our childhood,
Mm.
statistically.
Yeah, that's beautiful. So you mentioned that survival energy. Going forward now, what's your vision of you and that thriving energy? What does that look and feel like to you? How would you describe it, I guess?
Well, it's certainly a different energy because I was always living in shame or fear. So I certainly was not thriving. And now I have this energy that now that I've healed and know it's possible, and have an understanding of what other women are going through, um, now it's like the tiger's coming out. That energy is like, absolutely not. We are not going to let this happen. And I've lived under patriarchy for, my whole life, for centuries and centuries, women have. And I just feel this energy of the earth rising where women have been held down, pushed down, their voices have been silenced. And this is just part of the movement. And I want to raise that vibration and that energy, and we're going to thrive, not just survive anymore. Come on, we only have this one life. I'm not going to die with this dream in my heart, and neither should anyone else. Y'all have a dream in your heart. Don't die with it. Let's go.
Love that. Oh, what a way to wrap that up, man. Okay, so is there anything else you'd like to share before you kind of shout out how people can connect with you? I got so caught up in what you're saying now, I don't even know what I'm talking about.
I get going too, and I get passionate. Anything else to say? Okay, well, as far as my group goes, I just want you to know, no matter where you are in the spectrum of your healing journey, Whether you just want to come and sit in the back and just watch and listen and take in, I welcome you. You're in the middle of the process. I have one-on-one sessions where you can join me where we work through these things. It's client driven. I am educated in multiple modalities and working through traumas. So that I have that. If you want to be in the Rise and Reclaim Network and you're ready to shout from the rooftops your story and get that out there, I welcome you. Just, put that word in interview and we'll get you on. But regardless of where you are, I want you to feel safe and I want you to know I validate you and I'm going to hold space for you.
Beautiful. The Rise and Reclaim Network, and make sure when we post the video that you put in the comments all of those ways that people could connect with you.
I will. I absolutely will.
Awesome. Glenna, thank you so much for sharing your story, sharing your passion, sharing your vision. It's very powerful.
Thank you, Sandra. Truly appreciate you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, everybody, you've been listening to the interview with Glenna Hudson. If you want to connect with her, we will post in the comments below so you can do that. Have a wonderful, wonderful day, everybody.
Thanks, everybody.